And you are watching / listening to another edition of Blewetts Blitz, live 10 minutes after Rivka just got off with, I believe she had Rich Samini on. Nania, 1 day until the rookies report, and I think, is it 5 or 6 days until the vets report? I think is it the 23rd?
Yeah, 23rd.
23rd, but still, tomorrow we get pictures of Braylon Allen walking in, and Isaiah Davis, and Corley was signed. So like we get some excitement starting tomorrow. The off season is almost like officially over, and at least in terms of like the really dry parts of the off season. So Nania, you will not have to stretch as far as you possibly can to get an article out there. Are you excited, my friend?
I'm excited. I mean, listen, I'm starving so much that when we get those pictures of Braylon Allen walking out, like going up to the front door, like that is going to fill such a big void for me, because we're at the point where the Jets are putting out videos where they're asking me to talk about leaky photo at my family dinner. Did you see that? They're like, here's some topics you could talk about at your family dinner, and it's like leaky photo in the defensive tackle rotation. I'm like, all right, we're at rock bottom at this point.
Yeah,
so
I did not.
I'm ready for some pictures of the rookies, but training camp next week. Let's go. I need some real news. I'm so tired of the offseason. Do you feel like this has been the longest offseason in a while? Because I feel like it's been longer.
I think it is, because
usual.
One, we've been waiting forever for Rodgers to play, one, and two, like typically our off seasons have like some type of quarterback change, some type of head coach firing, some type of OC search. Like there wasn't a lot of substance in terms of like things we need to do this offseason. So free agency happened. We made a few splashes, but then after that, there wasn't really much to talk about. Like usually we have a lot to discuss. So yeah, I feel like it went pretty slow, but yeah, I didn't see that tweet out today. I was unfortunately at the shooting range from 9 o'clock in the morning until about now. So it was hot as hell out. So I was doing that. Truck update. I'm getting it in 6 days for the people who care. 6 days. It's only been, I think, 45 days at this point. I haven't had it. So brutal. But we have Dano in here, says 10K incoming from your lips, from your keyboard to God's email. Dano, it's been a snail's pace. The climb right now from like 9.2 to 10 has been brutal. The slowest has gone. So I know it's the off season. Hopefully it'll get to 10K even before the season. That'd be great. We have John Hassel in here. We have Connor in here. Connor recently asked me to join another fantasy league. I told him, like, dude, listen, I'm in 6 leagues already. Like, I'm trying to drop leagues. I cannot do another fantasy league. It's just like, I love doing it, but the problem becomes where it's like, hey, I have Brandon Ayuk. He needs to get over 15 for me to win, but over 20, I lose in my other league against him. Like, I just can't. It's just too much juggling. So I don't like to do it. So I'm going to try to drop a league actually. But we'll see. Dano in here again says, is it just me, or have they not released a single photo of Aaron from Media Day? And he was there for them that Monday. IIRC. Am I just out of the loop? What does IIRC mean?
If I recall.
Oh, if I recall, that's a new one, Dano. That's a new one. Dano must be like under 30 here or something. I'm over 30, so you got to chill with that stuff, Dano. Give me a couple of weeks to pick that one up. Gabriel says, "Let's go." I always look forward to the top 25. Unfortunately, not with Kyle Smith. Not that Nani is a bad replacement, but I've been doing this show with Kyle Smith for probably 6 years. Unfortunately, Kyle will not. And I asked him to do it. I was like, "Come on, just do a show." He's like, he refuses to do Jet shows unless he really, really, really knows the players. And he said he doesn't at this point. So it is what it is. Weekly waivers is a bitch too, with too many leagues. Yep. Throwback to Kyle putting Flacco way too high. I'm in 4 this year. I try to do less than 5 because that's when it gets to the point where you have to root against players. Yeah. So I'm in 6 right now. That's why I can't take on 7. I'm going to drop that 6 to 5. But yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm excited for camp to come. Again, we are on the summer sucks bandwagon that other people are not on.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty obvious with my job why the summer sucks. And on top of that, like, it's just baseball right now, which the Mets climb back to, I think they're like 45 and 42 right now, or 43. So that, at least that's exciting. But there's no sports. It's just it's brutal. And yes, my life does revolve kind of around sports. So good afternoon to you, Hawk. John says, "Hey Nania, those best team, worst team simulations articles were highly entertaining. Good job. What were those about, Nania? Transparently, again, I've been pretty busy, but what were the concepts of those articles?"
Yeah, so there's this website called What If Sports where you could pick any team from any year and simulate a game between them, and it'll show you the score, like the play-by-play, the stats, and everything. So I made I did 2 different tournaments. I did one that included the best Jets teams of all time competing in a tournament to see who the winner would be, and I did one with the worst teams where the losers advance. So those were fun. I had some fun with that. I was pretty unhinged. I did some crazy stuff in
pretty.
It's July it's mid-July, so no one saw it. But I appreciate you reading it. I'm glad people enjoyed it.
Nobody said, yeah, it's like, that's funny too. Like I put out a review and like, I'm like, I look at it, it's like 300 views. I'm like, it is what it is. It's that time of the off season. That's okay. So I was off. Yeah, I was off by 10. I should have known that. 56 and 53. Dead period. Yeah, dead period's brutal. And like I said, there's not as much really to do like this off season with the roster or with, the coaching or trades or Aaron Rodgers or, are we going to get rid of Sam Darnold? Is it Zach Wilson's time? Like there were just so many kind of things like buttoned up that they get kind of boring. But nonetheless, Nania, we'll start our top 25. This is always like one of my favorite shows of the year. It is just so funny how dead it is right now. I'm really excited for the season to start. Connor says, Blewett, you and I are in the same boat. Mets, Jets, Nets, but I'm Rangers and you are Devils. We're the same for 3 there. Devils, I would say, since you've been alive, have been better because they've been in the race for the cup more. But in my lifetime, the Devils have won 3 championships, even though I was like really young. So it still kind of counts. And the Devils should be a lot better this year with beefing up their defense and getting some actual goaltending. But we'll see. It's not a fun life. Like the Nets this season too. Nania, I'm gonna watch some of the games, but they're gonna be what? They're gonna be, I don't know, 18 and 64, or whatever they're going to be. Like, it's going to be brutal. So nonetheless, we'll start the top 25. Then you guys throw in questions. We'll go until we go. So I usually have a couple of guys. I know. So Nani and I talked about doing this. And then Nani put out an article like 3 days later, talking about his top, was it the whole 53 Nania or whatever it was?
Everyone on the team, all 90 players.
All 90 players, yeah. So you'll have a couple of guys who were almost in your top 25, but it's always fun to kind of see where we rank these players. And to me, when I do it, it's more I would say it's more so like where do they rank relative to their position, not like most valuable, because most valuable Aaron Rodgers would be 1, right? But I think Q and Sauce are better corners and D tackles than they are quarterback, or that Rodgers is a quarterback. So I kind of rank it like relative to their position. How good are they? I'm assuming you did the same type of deal, but
that's what I did. I mean, because there's different ways you could do it, because if you're talking about value, then like you said, Rodgers would be first, then maybe you're putting corner over running back, receiver over D tackle, or however you would want to do that. I did pretty much the same thing. I did it based on how do I think they will compare to the rest of their position this year. And I also did it that way. I did it in terms of what do I think they're going to do this year, not what have they proven to this point, or, what have they, where would they be in a league wide ranking right now or anything like that. I did it. Where do I think they're going to be among their position this year? So that was my basis. So also, and we talked about this too, I did have a couple special teamers in my top 25. So I know you didn't, so I'm going to exclude them for the purpose of this and add in my 26th and 27th players to complete the 25.
Dano is asking, are you saying like now and in the future? It's like Nania said, it's pretty much for this year. Like you had to take them for 1 season, because obviously like then becomes the whole discussion like, hey, Tyron Smith versus Fashanu. Like if you had to start a roster with one of them right now, as long as you're not assuming you're going to go for the Super Bowl in year 1, like you're going to take Fashanu over Tyron, but obviously because it's just a 1-year type of deal, which actually we should get into some other things too before we actually get into the top 25. There hasn't been a ton of news, but you had Rodgers at the golf outing. That's kind of started the whole thing. Play with Devontae Adams, ... Again, he could have been talking about golf. I don't think he was talking about golf. On top of that, you had the receiver show, which I don't know if you've watched. I think
he was. Like, I don't know if you saw the actual clip, but it was like some TMZ type reporter who was like following him on the golf course, and he was talking. The whole conversation was about golf. So I think he was talking about golf. I don't know. I feel like a lot of the Adams talk is very contrived versus being legitimate, but at the same time, I feel like he himself has not really shut it down. Like he was on think it was Shannon Sharp's podcast, and he could have taken like the cookie cutter route, like, yeah, I'm on the Raiders. I'm focused on being a Raider in 2024. That's all I'll say about it.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't. Like, he continued to say, like, I would love to play with Rodgers again. If there was anyone else I would want to, or if there's anyone I would want to team up with, it would be him. So I feel like he's kind of egged it on Jets players. So I think the Jets' interest, we got, the report that they actually were interested in doing this last year. So that shows us that there's legitimate interest. So I think there's, some smoke to the fire, but I don't think anything real would happen until the Raiders are clearly having a bad season. The Jets are in a position where they're competitive and they would want to make that addition. So I in season, I could see it if the Raiders are really bad. And I think there's a chance they will be. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, if I want to can you pull up their schedule, Nania? Because I know a lot of people are talking about them going, going with only like 3. I think their bye week is week 10 or something like that, or when's the trade deadline?
Yeah,
I think it's week 10, or week 11 or something like that. So let's see their first, 10 games. But it's a thing where, like you said, Devontae said that, hey, if I'm going to get reunited anywhere, if I'm going to go anywhere, like it's with Aaron Rodgers. So I would say that if he is traded at some point, it's probably like a 70-75% chance it is the Jets. It seems like that's probably what it would be. But yeah, you have Garrett Wilson saying he would welcome it. Breece Hall saying they're always scheming. So with that being said, are you not? And this is kind of a multi-part question. Are you not in the boat of trading for him now and trading for him? At the point in the season, at the trade deadline, which I believe is week 10, week 11.
Yeah, I think I would wait because, I mean, I'm in the boat where I think this team can be successful without building a tandem like that. Obviously, you would like it because we talked about the wide receiver questions, and just for the depth sake, part of the equation, that would be great. But they, like I did an article recently looking at the Lions offense and how they were so elite last year with, one elite wide receiver. They had one really good tight end, and then it was just a bunch of like specialist type guys, but they got the most out of every single one of those players because they did such a good job of maximizing what they're good at. And I think the Jets are positioned to do that. They have the talent to do it, but you question whether the coaching staff is capable of doing the same thing that the Lions did. But I think, they have a, clear cut number one guy at receiver, solid tight end, one of the best receiving backs, and a lot of guys at receiver who have their share of questions, but what each of them can do well. So I think they can easily be an elite passing game without adding this type of guy. So I wouldn't panic to do that unless it, becomes clear, like maybe you're like 6-3 and you're like a piece away and you think that could be your last piece, or maybe an injury happened and then you really need that type of move. So I wouldn't panic to do it just yet. I could see the appeal, but I also think there's a possibility for them to be very successful without it. But I pulled up the Raiders beginning of season schedule here.
And stop me if you disagree here, but like just picking the teams in terms of like who's going to be favored in these games, like let's say 0-1. I think the Chargers are a better team than they are, especially you're going to be in Los Angeles. 0-2 against the Ravens, 1-2 Panthers. Okay, give them that win. 1-3 Browns, 2-3 against the Broncos. Let's say they take a win there, but 2-4 Steelers, 2-5 Rams, 2-6 Chiefs, 2-7 Bengals.
This is rough. A lot of AFC powerhouses in here.
Exactly. So maybe they skate away with another win. Maybe we give them the Chargers and the Steelers too. But you're still talking about 3-6, in my opinion, which is being a little bit generous.
Yeah.
So at that point, you think they probably trade him. So okay, the Raiders call you up. Hey, hey Joe Douglas / Michael Nania, he wants to go to you guys. Give us your best offer. What do you? And obviously we want to make away like bandits. But what do you think the trade compensation would be if he's going to be traded at like week 10 right there?
I mean, I think a straight up second round pick could get it done. I mean, Diggs got that plus a couple day 3 picks, but he also had a cap charge for the Bills to trade him. They lost cap space to make that deal. The Raiders would be saving cap space. So I would think that would take off some trade compensation compared to what Diggs' package was. So I think going a little bit less than that, a second round pick might do it. But then at the same time, you're looking at this being a potential rental type of deal short term. type things. Maybe that lessens the cost down to a third rounder. I mean, I guess I would start with the third rounder, see if they bite on that. Maybe move it up to a second. But I think it depends on what position the Jets are at. I mean, I was thinking, like, do you think, let's say at this point the Jets are 8-1 and they're just firing on all cylinders. It's perfect. The offense is amazing. Everything's clicking. Would you feel the need to make that type or this type of move in that situation more or less than like if you're 5-4, 6-3? Like, would you be more intrigued to be like, okay, Adams could be the last piece. Like, we're this dominant already. We add him. Now we're just a juggernaut. Or would you be more compelled to do it if it's like, we have to take a shot to try to take that next step?
I think either way, I want him just as bad. You know, like realistically, realistically, like, hey, you're 8-1 at that point, which let's say even like 7-2. Give us the best chance to beat the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, or the Ravens, or the Bengals, or whatever it may be. Because then what happens if one of our guys goes down after that point? Like, we could have had Devontae, and then obviously if we're 5-4, it's like, dude, if not this year, then when? Like, maybe this will be the final piece, to pushing us over the top. But like Rivka said, and like you said, it's a half-year rental for him. So I think it would cost like a third-round pick and maybe like maybe a fourth, maybe a fifth. But I would start at like a 3 and then probably go up to like a 3 and a 4 at the highest. But I don't think you have to trade a second-round pick for a half-year rental for Devontae from a losing team who's going to be saving money, getting rid of him. Now, it's good that Rivka's in here, and I know you read her article. So in terms of the cap implications, they trade him. I know it's like prorated, right? So he's making like, is it like $25 million this year, whatever it is? And obviously every game he plays, the Raiders have to pay him like per game basis. But I do think it's going to be lesser if they trade for him in week 10. So you trade for him now. What would the cap hit be? And Rivka's in here, so I'm asking Rivka, what would the cap hit be at about week 10? And then past that, do you think it's just a half-year rental and the Jets treat it that way? Or do you think it's a thing where, hey, you try to sign him for one extra year and he's kind of here with Rodgers, and you have Devontae for half of 2024 and then 2025 as well?
I mean, if I'm understanding this correctly, the rest, he has no guaranteed money remaining. So if you traded for him, you could just cut him after the year and have no ramifications. So, compared to like a Brandon Ayuk, who you would sign to a massive extension and that would cost you at least one, perhaps multiple other players that you otherwise would extend, I think that would be appealing to just be like, okay, we're getting him to go all in and he's not going to hurt our long term. But I think he wouldn't. I'm not sure. Honestly, you would have to ask Rivka. The cap stuff really is not my strong suit either, in terms of like option money, bonuses, and all this. But I mean, what do you think? Would you want to like just do the rental, or would you try to extend him?
It honestly depends on like, they're sitting in that room with like a big spreadsheet, I'm sure, of like who they can pay and what they can offer and all that stuff. So if it's feasible, then I would like to have him have him here for the next year too, because at that point, I don't think you have to go like kind of like balls to the wall with trying to re-sign Mike Williams. Like if it's Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson, you can just you can get just a guy at the 3, or even like Corley. If Corley steps up, then he could be your 3 next year. But I'm okay with getting Devontae for half a year and then next year as well, and then letting Mike Williams walk, at that point, and then supplementing the wide receiver core if you need to.
So I think I'm reading the article that Rivka put, and if she's in here and can correct me, but I think you would have a $35.6 million base salary next year if they were in 2025, if they were to trade for him. So obviously you're not paying
before
him
you
that.
say
So you would have to
that,
sign him to a new deal. Like,
so
for
before
it to be
you
realistic.
Before you try to say the prorated stuff and all that, it's Rivka's saying she believed it would cost them $8 million in 2024 if they acquired him at the deadline. She's trying to prorate it based on number of games. So $8 million. The Jets have it's like $8 to $9 million right now. So you probably have to rework like one of your contracts a little bit to fit them in the into the window for this year. And then, you're hoping at that point that, listen, like he's with Rodgers. Rodgers took less money. You'd have to hope that he would take less money as well, because on the open market, let's say he has a good year with the Jets, and a lot of people are concerned about like his down years with the Raiders. But if you look at who he's playing quarterback with, like obviously he's going to have less yards per catch and catches and target, whatever it may be. So his numbers were down, but I think that's more so because of the situation. Yeah, I still think he'll be, a studly receiver with the Jets. Let's say he finishes with 1,200 yards, whatever it may be. He'll probably get, 25-ish million in free agency, maybe to $30 million for like a year or two. So hopefully it takes less with the Jets, and maybe it's like they give him like a 1 year, $20 million deal. I don't know exactly what it would be, but yeah, I think going for it all is what we want. Now, in terms of like him versus Ayuk, I'm firmly in the camp of getting Devontae Adams over Ayuk. Not that Ayuk individually, like, hey, if you can take one for your team right now, building a roster, yeah, I'm taking Ayuk because he's young. He's 26, something like that, 27 maybe even 25. The thing is with Ayuk, you have to sign him to a long-term deal, right? Like you're not trading a first-round pick for Ayuk and then letting him walk. He's gonna have you by the balls at that point, and you have to sign him for a 5-year, $150 million deal or whatever the hell it's going to be. It's going to be 30 million about plus. Or 30 million. Yeah. About 30 million plus for him per year. And then past that, that's when you talk about like, hey, you have to sign Garrett, you have to sign Sauce, you have to sign JJ, Brees, and not even just those guys, like talking about Quincy Williams. He only had a 3-year contract, right? He's done in 2 years. Are you signing Conklin? Are you signing Michael Carter II? Are you signing Reed? Are you like, there's so many guys to sign that I don't think they can make Brandon Ayuk work as well. So.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, I think just player to player, you take Ayuk, but just because of cap ramifications, I think clearly Adams is more feasible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a thing too. Where like, hey, if he wants to make like one more major deal at 32 years old, I don't know who's gonna give him like a major deal, maybe a 2-3 year max. Maybe it is a thing where, hey, me and Rodgers, one last shot. We play the last half of the season together, and then I walk in 2020 after the 2024 season. I could see that, but yeah, for a 3rd round pick for an $8 million cap hit for the Jets to hopefully push them over the edge to winning a Super Bowl, I am so down for it.
So with that being the situation, like now that we've kind of established that, would you do a 2nd round pick for him to, if we're assuming it's just 2024
for the whole season?
Like if it's mid-season trade, 2nd round pick for the rest of the year.
Yeah, like probably, but like realistically, I don't think we have to go that high. And how I'm going to combat that, but the way I'm thinking about it is if we're going to go all in and we give them a 2nd round pick, you're talking about pick hopefully 64. Like, am I going to lose Devontae Adams for pick 64? I'm not, so, but with that being said, I don't think it costs a 2nd. I think it costs a 3rd and a 5th, a 3rd and a 6th, maybe a 3rd and a 4th, but I just don't see a 2nd round pick for potentially a 7-game rental. It's just, that's a lot for a guy who's 31 years old with, again, they're saving money on that too. And he kind of, I don't know. There's a no trade clause. Like I'm not sure his contract if there's a no trade clause, but if he does have a no trade clause, then it's like, hey, I'm forcing you to trade me to the Jets, and that's it. So that'd be an interesting tidbit that I actually didn't even know about if he has no trade clause or not. He does not. Okay. Yeah, that makes it a little bit more interesting, but Dano says, I don't think the money will make even a scratch of difference. It's more so the capital conversation, how much you want to dole out there, how much the cap does spill over to other years though, right? It's like that money has to come from somewhere. Whether you're renegotiating with Q or Quincy or you're extending Conklin, like whatever it is, that 20 million or the 8 million this year. And let's say it's like 25 million next year. If he doesn't get extended, then it comes from somewhere, right? Like it's eventually going to catch up with the Saints. I know we've been talking about the Saints since like 2017 in terms of the cap not being real, but eventually it is going to catch up with them. And you actually look at the Saints, their roster is actually pretty bad this year, and they're relying on a lot of old guys, but nonetheless, extend Conklin right now. I would love to extend Conklin. Quincy's gonna want a new contract. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see. But yeah, I think we hit it all on Devontae and Brandon Ayuk. But I'm definitely more for Devontae just because I want the core guys on a roster. I want Quincy and Garrett back and Conklin and whoever else. But let me see if I'm gonna pull up my top 25 list. So we will start with Nania first with your 25th best player on the Jets roster.
All right, let's do it. So this is off of my top 90 ranking. I already had this made, so I didn't have to make a specific ranking for this. So cheated a little bit. But yeah, like I said earlier, I got 2 special teams guys in here. So technically this is my number 27, but 25 counting out special teams. This one is pretty interesting. I'm curious to see if you actually have this guy in here. I think it'll be somewhat surprising, but I got Braylon Allen at 25th.
So I'll be very transparent with you here. And I was looking at the list just before we started. And Braylon Allen was my 25. I kicked him down to 26, and this is more so not me and me like watching his film. It's more projection and me having faith in the Jets defensive staff. But I put Kinlaw here at 25.
Okay.
And like individually, I liked Allen and his film more. I like, let's say Davis and his film more. Again, another guy who just missed Fotu and his film more, probably a little bit more than Kinlaw, but knowing he's going to get a lot of reps next to Q and knowing that Aaron Whitecotton and the Jets defensive staff, coaching staff is coaching him up, I think he'll be better than I probably am expecting him to be. Like, I do think there's a relatively high ceiling with him because obviously he's a more of a, he's a stud in terms of like how athletic he is and stuff. So this is more so my faith in the Jets coaching staff than it is him. But yeah, Kinlaw finished as my number 25, which I don't know if he even made your 25. He might be like really far down for you, but
he did.
He made the top 25.
You said Leaky Fotu just missed your top 25.
Yeah,
I have him at 41.
41
out of my 90. Yeah,
I'm really curious. After this, I'm curious to hear who your 26 through 40 are. But yeah, like and the guys after 25, like I'm looking at it and I'm kind of just like throwing a list together. That's not necessarily in an order. So I listed like 8 guys after it. The next 8 guys who came to mind, and Fotu was in there. So I'm curious to see who else you have above Fotu at that point. But my number 24. And again, this is rookies are kind of hard to project. And I don't think he's gonna get the most touches in the world this year, but I do have Corley as my 24th best player on the Jets roster right now. And I think that's partially the fact that he's not going to get a ton of catches this year. And then on top of that, it's a thing where he does have to develop. And I've been pretty outward in saying, like, I think that Corley has more vertical ability in his game than some people noted. But with that being said, I still think he's relatively raw as a route runner. Salah said it. You could just tell by watching his film. And on top of that, I don't think he's gonna have the most touches in the world. So I had Corley as my 24.
Yeah, he was my first one to miss the cut, right behind Braylon Allen. But I got Javon Kinlaw right ahead of Braylon Allen in the 24th spot. And yeah, it's like not a necessarily saying that I'm higher on him than Corley or Braylon Allen. I think anyone who's listened to either of us knows that. But yeah, I mean, he is the second starting defensive tackle, so I just think he's gonna. It's more just a product of like the role that he's gonna have and having more of a chance to make an impact. And I don't think he's like a terrible player. It's just overpaid relative to the contract he got. And I think ideally you probably don't want him as your second best defensive tackle on the team. So like this isn't a spot that says he's a bad player. It's more so just relative to the value. But he's in here at 24.
Yeah, I would be much more okay with him. Like if he got like $3 million, $4 million, okay, like I understand the swing on him, but to see that he got double the money that Jefferson got is just crazy to me. And on top of that, they didn't send a text back fast enough or a fax or whatever the hell happened there. Like we still don't actually know. I would love to hear how that. Like, I don't know. It's not just Joe Douglas, right? It's not like Joe Douglas is on a landline from like 1990 and he can only take one call at once. And, and he had the busy signal because, Joe Douglas was only on the phone, was on the phone with Fotu or something like that. I don't understand how that happened, but nonetheless, so we both had Kinlaw and Corley right at the 25 mark or like right about it. So we're pretty close there. Who was your 23 player or your 23rd best player?
Number 23, we have Tony Adams.
Okay. I am relatively close to that as well. This one's probably, I'm going to say if I had to venture to guess, this guy is probably not on your list, but I could be wrong. My 23 is actually Jamie Sherwood.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, he's not on my top 25.
I think, and like it's gonna be hard for him to maybe prove that this season, but I think if you were in a situation where, let's say, Mosley went down for a couple of games, like I'm relatively confident in Sherwood coming in and not playing horribly at least. Like I think if he was a start on team right now, he would be like a baseline average, maybe slightly below average type starting linebacker. So I think he probably gets he doesn't get as much respect as he deserves. When he comes in, he makes an impact. So Sherwood was my 23. Was I right in guessing that he wasn't on your top 25?
Yeah, I don't have him in my top 25, but I see the vision. I mean, I wrote my little description that I wrote for him is pretty much exactly what you said, that he was impressive in his sub package role, and that if he were to come in as a starter, you could probably trust him to perform decently if that were to happen. So I did not have him in my top 25, but I think that's, just relative to like what did they show in the snaps that they played. I think there's definitely a case for it. So 22.
Yep.
You want to go with your 22?
Yeah, sure. I'll go with my 22. And this one's hard to quantify. You're not, and hopefully you don't see him at all this year, but I have Tyrod as my 22.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. And again, like, do I think he's better than probably some lower level starting quarterbacks in the NFL this year? Probably. Like, I think if you had to really go through the list of like whoever's at 29, 30, 31, 32, like he might be the 27th, 26th best quarterback in the NFL at this point. And you kind of do, like, maybe I am pouring a little bit into positional value here. I don't know, but yeah, Tyrod's my 22. Is that another guy who didn't make your list, or?
Yeah, not my top 25. A few spots out. I mean, I was thinking just because like he would be like a low end starter.
Yeah,
I think is his talent level, and maybe some of these players are a little bit above that. I mean, maybe Kinlaw isn't, but I did not have him in my 25. But
maybe it'd be proper to put him below Sherwood for me, because that's what I was thinking about before I said it. Maybe he should be 23 and Sherwood 22, because Sherwood I think could be like an okay starter, but Corley as your starting receiver, not so great right now. Kinlaw as your starting D tackle, not so great right now. So I think he falls in the range of those guys. But transparently, I kind of wish I put him at 23 and Sherwood at 22, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I could have put Tyrod higher, but in this spot I have this one. This one I'm curious to see if you have in your top 25.
No, I don't think so.
Olu Fashanu is my number 22. I just think he's like talking about how guys will perform relative to position. I think this is going to be an average starting tackle this year. He's going to start some games. It's pretty likely. And I think when he plays, that's about what you're going to get from him. And for a rookie, like that's great. And just for the sake of this list, like I think that puts him above the players we talked about. It puts him nicely between the guys that I've listed already and the rest of the players on this list, who many of them are pretty definitively above average. So I have Olu here at 22.
Yeah, so Olu is my 21. So we're very close. Yeah, we're very close right there. I would say, like, realistically, and it just is what it is. A rookie tackle in year one I think average is a great. Would be great.
Oh yeah, a lot are really bad. Even if they turn out to be great, it's not uncommon for them to really struggle.
So transparently, I think and again, maybe this is like positional value and stuff like that, or him, his draft capital, like propelling him up the list a little bit. I do think he'd probably be like a below average player in his first year, just because I think he'll be pretty good in pass protection. Let's say he's even plus average in pass protection. His run game needs a lot of work still. And I think in year one, when he's asked to do that, it could be pretty ugly at times. So I would say he would be like an average-ish pass protector in year one, which is great. That's honestly great in year one, but a pretty bad run blocker. So I think he would fall below average in my opinion. So, but with that being said, yeah, you had him at 22, I had him at 21. So who is your 21? And by the way, Rich is in here. What's up to Rich? He says, "What's up, guys? I was sad to see this done without Kyle. Me too. This is definitely the next best option. My favorite Jets content duo. We appreciate you, Rich, as always, and ton of support that you always pour out in the comments for sure. Yeah, so go with your 21 then, Nania. Who is frozen right now. The happens to Nania quite a bit. He's not the best internet. So I will go to the chat a little bit while I'm waiting for Nania to join back in here. See if I can remove him. Yeah. All right. He's not in here. He'll come back. Damon Harrison said it was Woody Johnson who didn't pick up the phone for Quentin Jefferson. How did Damon Harrison know that though? Like our Damon Harrison, like Damon Snacks Harrison knows that. Interesting. So maybe it was Woody who didn't pick up for Quentin Jefferson either. Oh. I got you, Rip. You're saying Damon Harrison, Woody didn't pick up the phone for him. So then maybe it's the same for Quentin Jefferson, but why would Woody Johnson be involved in any of the negotiations? Like, unless it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Like, why is he even involved? Why is he even in the room? Like, I get like, hey, you give us a thumbs up on giving this guy $6 million guaranteed or this cash up front. Like, yeah, okay. He gives the thumbs up for it, but why he's answering phones on Quentin Jefferson?
I'm back.
I don't know. Yeah,
All right,
Nani, your internet bites you in the ass sometimes, but
I swear it only happens when I do the streams with you. Not even other people, not throughout the day. It's just only when I'm with you. The last time when I was on that, there was a power outage, like fully out. My phone was dead. I couldn't open my garage. Like, I couldn't open the front door to my building. I was starting to panic a little bit. It only happens when I'm on shows with you. But did you list your next one? What are we, 21?
No, so I got to your. I was talking about. I don't know what I was talking about. I was just talking about where I think Olu will fall this year. Average pass protector, whatever. But I don't think you gave me your 21 yet.
Okay, 21, Chuck Clark.
Okay, yeah, we're in the same range as each other, but Chuck Clark is. What do you think about and Sabo brought this up, and it's a good point. What do you think about him in terms of like his role? Because I like him more so in a role that I don't think he's going to fully be able to like play with the Jets, if you feel what I'm saying. Like, I think he's going to be a little bit miscast in this Jets scheme, which is unfortunate. So I don't think he shows out as well as he possibly can.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, because I think deep coverage is probably the worst part of his game.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a good tackler in space. He takes safe angles. He keeps things in front of him, which is the anti-Jordan Whitehead, which I think is going to be a big plus. I think he's good in man coverage against tight ends. So, some of these things are kind of more aligned with someone who would play closer to the line of scrimmage versus being your free safety, which he might have to do a lot of. But, Jordan Whitehead was basically playing that role, and he was obviously very much miscast in that, but they didn't really seem to care. So I think Clark might suffer from some of the same things, but I do think he will at least be an upgrade in terms of tackling angles and when he needs to drop down and play man and things like that, play the run in the box when it happens. So I still think in that role, he would provide an upgrade in a lot of areas, but I see what you're saying in terms of like deep coverage being his weakness, and he'll probably still be doing some of that.
You're unhinged now, Nania. You're saying that Chuck Clark is going to be an upgrade to Jordan Whitehead. Really going off the rails here.
The team leader in interceptions from a year ago. Interception leader on one of the best secondaries in the league. I mean, that's valuable.
We have Sluggo in here who and Rivka apologized for taking so long or whatever on our podcast, which is not a big deal as long as it was 3:30. But I did click in there to see if she was ending, and I saw Sluggo's comment saying something like Rivka being better on the eyes than me. Like, at least he doesn't have to look at me or something like that. So Sluggo, I'm kind of disappointed in you, talking shit about me. So now we're enemies again. You should be only listening to the audio version if you hate my face so much, Sluggo. What's going on here, buddy? Just go to the podcast app, find me there. All right. Rich says, just so that I don't have to go back to the beginning, can you quickly give me your 25 through 21? So I'll do it quickly. Kinlaw was my 25. Corley was my 24. Moving Tyrod to my 23. Sherwood was my 22. Olu was my 21. And then Nani, you just went up to your 21, yep. Right? So if you can give Rich yours.
Yeah. 25, Braylon Allen, then Javon Kinlaw, Tony Adams, Olu Fashanu, and Chuck Clark.
Okay. And my next, since I'm one behind you now, is Tony Adams. So this is where I think he falls. I think he's probably I think like my outlook for him this year is to be like a average-ish safety. I think now we're towards the point in the roster we're talking about like average level players.
So and Tony Adams, say Tony Adams was below that and you're expecting him to leap to that this year?
Yeah. I would say he was below average last year, right? Like he had some hiccups. There was more there. He had the 2 plays in the Broncos game where he let up like touchdowns or big runs. I know at least one was a touchdown, but maybe both of them were touchdowns. He had 2 really terrible angles there. The Eagles pick was fine, but realistically, Jalen Hurts just didn't seem. He threw it right into his chest. Like it wasn't the best play by Tony Adams. So I would say I was a little bit disappointed in Tony Adams last year in terms of my expectations for him. But I think he now reaches them this year in his second full year of starting, and he'll be about an average level safety.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's kind of my mindset as well with where I ranked him, and we had him in a similar area of our rankings. But yeah, next in line here, this is 20. This is 20, right? John Simpson.
Okay, so Simpson's my 19. So we're very, very close in our thinking right now.
I'm surprised you have him above me. I'm like the biggest Simpson supporter. I played it kind of fair with the ranking. I wasn't gonna like overinflate him because I'm always hyping him up. But yeah, like I want to be realistic with
the talent on our roster, right? Like I think that's talent on our roster. I think 2-3 years ago he would have been inching towards the top 10, but to me, just like Adams, in my opinion, Simpson's going to be like an average guard this year, and especially considering he's playing between Joe Tippmann, who I think is a plus average player, and Tyron Smith, when he plays, is a top 5 left tackle in the NFL. So I honestly expected you to have him higher. I was thinking about it in my head. I was like, hey, Simpson's coming up for me here, and like Nania loves this dude. Nania might have him like inching towards the top 15. So I'm actually a little bit surprised you had him at. Would you say
it's just such, even like my 20? Inflated version of John Simpson that I think we might see still isn't on the level of most of these guys who are going to be at the top here. It's just how talented the roster is, which is a testament to it. Also, I realized I had a third special teams guy in here. Thomas Hennessy was my 19, so I actually missed my 25. So Malachi Corley is actually my 25, and push everyone else up one spot.
We had a really close, we had the same kind. Like we both had Corley down there, Kinlaw down there, Olu down there, Adams, Simpson. Like we're actually pretty on the money in terms of like a 3 kind of like a 3 window range with our guys right now. But yeah, pretty much. Was Simpson your 20 or your 19?
So he's 19.
19. Okay. Simpson was my 19 as well. Okay, yeah, because he got pushed up or whatever. Because so my 18 is a guy who you just had 2 or 3 picks ago, and that's Chuck Clark. Again, like maybe I should put him a little bit lower because I think he's maybe slightly below average in this role, but but he's just about teetering on like the average-ish level. So I would say Chuck Clark is my 18, but maybe I should move him down like 2 or 3 spots, but I'm okay with it. I just think he's a little bit miscast. If he was going to be a guy in the box playing in zone, hook to curls, hook to seams, curl the flats in some looks, man coverage on running backs, man coverage on tight ends, used as a blitzer. Like that's what I think his best role is. Almost as like a hybrid linebacker, but in this system, he's going to be asked to play some cover 2, and he's going to be asked to man up, in quarters against a receiver or, a tight end. So I think he's a little bit miscast, but I still think he's a damn good player. So.
Yeah, so for me, this is the dividing line. We can call it the John Simpson, Chuck Clark line between average players or below. Plus. And I think everyone from this point onward is a plus player.
I'm with you. I'm 100% with you.
So, and I say that because I feel like this ranking is, I definitely think you are going to have this guy higher than me. And I'm kind of surprised I didn't put him higher because I'm a pretty big fan. But I have Tyler Conklin 18th.
Yeah. I'm higher on him. And again, it's kind of and maybe, like there are some guy. No, I'm almost close. I'm actually honestly like pretty close to you in terms of Conklin. Okay. It's not so far off. There's only one guy I have above him, or there's only one more guy I have to go to, or actually, sorry, 2 more guys I have to go to get to him. But I almost want to move some guys around now. He's your 18 or your 17?
Yeah, 18.
Okay, who's your 17?
17, Mike Williams.
Okay. So, you know what? Hold on. The only thing I want to do here, because I'm really thinking about Conklin. I'm going to put that right there. Okay, so I have Mike Williams at 17. And I think Mike Williams could, so we're close. I think Mike Williams could even be a lot higher. Part of the concern is the health, though, right? Like we don't really know how he's going to play, and that does factor into some of these questions. And for a lot of these guys, it does take multiple years coming off of the ACL injury to really get into get into full swings. So I think he's going to be a good number 2 this year, but I think when he's fully healthy, he's almost like more of like an elite number 2. But this year, I think he's just going to be like an okay number 2, right? Like is that fair to say? Like, maybe when he's healthy, he's a top 10 number 2 receiver, but this year he'll just be like I don't know, the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th best because he's coming off of an injury. So it almost feels a little bit low for Williams, but he's my 17.
Yeah, same. I definitely docked him for that because I think you have to account for it because like this is a guy who over his last 17 games, he has over 1,200 yards and 90 catches. I mean, that would be the number 1 on many teams, more than half in the league. But, those 17 games come over a span of 3 seasons because he's not always on the field. So, and even if he does play 17 this year, you don't know what version of him you're getting at 30 years old. History of neck and back injuries, ACL now. So you don't know what you're going to get from him. So I feel like a guy with his numbers should be a lot higher than this, but I'm adjusting downward considering some of these things. But this is still like high end number 2 for sure.
Yeah. And then so that was both of our 17s were Mike Williams.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Okay. So who is your 16 then?
This one's a big time projection pick. I feel like at this point he's probably in your top 25. Going into this was probably when I was looking at it. I figured this is probably my boldest pick, and you might not even have him top 25.
Yeah,
but I think you're going to have him in your top 25 at this point, seeing some of the players who we've had ranked already. But 16, I have Will McDonald.
Wow. Yeah. Dude, you know what? Honestly, I might have completely forgot about Will McDonald. Like
slipped your mind.
Just being transparent, he's not even on my. He's not
Can
even on my.
Can he be a top 25 player if you forgot about him that much?
I think he can be. I think he could be, and you know what though? Like, okay, so let me edit him in here, but I would have him below you. I would have him below you just because of the reps that or the lack of reps that he's going to get. And he's not really super developed in the run game. So he's like a specialist at this point. So I knock people for that. Like if McDonald was asked to be your starter this year, like you'd say he's going to be a below average starter, probably, right? At least in my opinion, you'd say that just because of the run game. So if I had to redo this list to put McDonald in, because I just transparently, I forgot him, he'd probably be at like 22. I would say I would push Tyrod down. He would be just 1 above Sherwood and 1 below Olu Fashanu. So I would say he would be down. So, or down on my list. I'm surprised you had him this high, just because, like, again, if he was cast into your full-time roster right now, like you said, that this is kind of the cutoff line for plus average players. So you think as a full-time player, he'd be plus average at this point?
I think so. I'm buying into him going into this year because I like just obviously it was a small sample of snaps, but what he did per snap when he was out there, whether you want to look at the stats or if you want to look at the film, like he looked like, to me, a guy who, even if he is only playing 40%, 50% of the snaps this year, I think he's going to get 10 sacks this year. And I think he's going to have 3 to 4 strip sacks in there with consistent wins, consistent pressure. I'm very high on McDonald going into this year. So this is like I said, projection pick. I don't think he's earned this yet, but I think by the end of the year, he will earn this spot or potentially even higher. So I'm buying in on him.
So Rich is mad at me for forgetting him. But with that being said, I think forgetting him is more, you could, like, that's more, I don't know. I get like more wiggle room with you, Rich, because I just straight up forgot him. It's not like he's not in my top 25. He is in my top 25. Just making this list, whenever I did it, I just completely forgot about Will McDonald. So you have him a couple spots higher than I would. Like, again, I have more faith in Williams and Clark and Simpson and Adams at this point, but that's more so because of the run game. Like, I do think he can come in and be a 7, 8, 9 sack guy this year. So I'm with you in terms of projecting him. I do think he's have a pretty good year, but like, you think you think he's a better DN this year starting than Conklin is a tight end and Mike Williams is a receiver. That's interesting.
Yeah, Conklin is an interesting one.
Dude, he can go off with Rodgers, like he really could. But
I think he will. I mean, I guess with Conklin, because like tight ends in the league, if you're going through it, how many tight ends would we put above Conklin? Like knowing what we know, not based on like, okay, ESPN thinks they're 25th because he had no touchdowns last year. Like how many tight ends do we actually think would be better?
Probably like, is there like a list of like fantasy tight end? Not
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up tight end stats. So like, let's see, Sam Laporta. Yeah. Right.
Right.
Kittle. Yeah.
Yep.
Kelsey. Andrews. Yes.
Yep. 4.
Hawkinson. Yeah.
Yep. Minus the injury, assuming health, because he's hurt this year.
But then beyond that, that's 5. Njoku, that's kind of debatable, right?
Yeah, I would say it's debatable.
Komet.
No.
Hunter Henry.
Nope.
Jake Ferguson. Dalton Schultz. Evan Engram.
Yeah, but Evan Ingram's like more like a receiver, right? Like he doesn't really play in line or anything like that.
Basically, yeah.
I would take the Bills rookie tight end. I'm blanking on his name right now.
I'm going by the tight end or the touchdown list right now. Logan Thomas, Cade Otton, Juwan Johnson, Donald Parham. I don't know. Maybe looking at this, Trey McBride. Maybe looking at this list, Conklin should be higher. Kyle Pitts, Dallas Goedert.
I'll take Pitts. I'll take Pitts because I think he was miscast with how he was used. I think he's a good player.
So I mean, we probably said like 6 or 7 guys.
I think you can argue Schultz. I think you can argue Ferguson. I think you could argue the Bills tight end. I think you could argue Njoku. But like again, you're talking about probably like 8 through 14. 8 through 12. Like realistically, probably. And maybe 8's even a little bit too high. Maybe it's not. Yeah, 8 through 12. Like so, he's a plus average tight end. So.
So I guess like for an edge rusher, that'd be the equivalent of like 15 to 25 because like there's 2 starting edge rushers versus,
exactly,
and basically 1 tight end. And would I put McDonald that high? Probably. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I would probably swap. I would swap them is what I would do. I'd put McDonald at 18.
And what about Simpson though? Simpson and Williams though too. It's like Williams. You're saying is an average level tight end. So is Mike Williams is a decent starter. So if he's a decent starter and Simpson's a decent starter, and maybe you would have him still over those guys, but like Mike Williams is a good number 2 when he's healthy. And again, I knocked him down a little bit, just saying like, hey, maybe he doesn't come back from injury as quick as we hope. So, but with that being said, Mike Williams is still to me at least an average number 2. And then Simpson's an average level guard. So that's and then Adams is teetering on it. Olu's teetering on it. That's
why I think he's going to be well above average. So that's why I think he's above that line. So I think Conklin is a debate for me because like going through the list, could he be like a top 10 tight end? And is that higher than what McDonald is as an edge rusher? Probably. So I think I'd maybe swap them. But then Mike Williams, like I think he's probably middle wide receiver too, which is. For McDonald, I think if you're talking about him being a 10 sack guy and an efficient, like even if he's like last year's Bryce Huff in a different sort of way, they're much different players, I think. But if he had that type of impact, like where would we put Bryce Huff last year? And is that better than a middle of the line wide receiver too? I don't know. I think a lot of these guys in this group are pretty close. With my optimism about McDonald.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and he was your 16th player, right? My 16th player is Morgan Moses at this point. Again, this is where I think we're talking about plus average players. Again, always hard to quantify, but I do think Morgan Moses is in that, 12 to 15 range, 10 to 15 range. I think he's a legitimately solid right tackle. And you watch him last year and, he got, there were some games he got beat up a little bit, but considering he was playing with was it a torn bicep he was playing with? I believe. So that's hard to do when he's healthy, and he's been mostly healthy throughout his career.
I think it was torn pec. Yeah.
Oh, torn pec. Okay, so torn pec. Regardless, torn anything, not going to be conducive to playing against freak athletes in the NFL. But I do think he's a plus average player. He is 34, so he's fallen down the list maybe a little bit, but I think he's gonna be healthy. I think he's gonna be a hell of a player for the Jets. And I think he actually got better with age. Like watching him at that point, they're the Redskins. I liked his Baltimore Ravens film more than I liked his Redskins film. So I think he actually got better with time. Now, obviously, you have to worry about, explosiveness and age and all that stuff, but you could be a good tackle well into your 30s. So I'm not overly concerned about him tearing his pec and being 34 years old. I still think he's going to be a solid player.
That's interesting that you say that you found him more, his film more appealing, coming into this year than when he came over from the Redskins. Like, how much of that do you attribute to like his individual improvements that you notice from him? Like his technique is legitimately improved versus like, that Washington situation is not as great as Baltimore. Like, how much do you discern between those things?
Yeah, it's like transparently, if I were to watch those seasons like back to back, I think I'd have a better answer. But watching like thousands of reps in between, it's kind of hard exactly how much to tell. Yeah. But I do think like when you said individually, individually film wise, I did like him on an individual basis, like more so than I did. Now does some of that does some of the scheme trickle into it? Like, did he run more power and counter and gap scheme stuff than he ran with the Redskins in 2021 or whatever? And is that part of the reason? Because in my opinion, he's definitely a better like gap scheme blocker. So could that have been part of it? Probably. And then you consider that the Redskins at that point probably had a balls right guard, where this season he's playing next to Zeitler, I believe was the right guard. So, he definitely had more talent around him. So I'm sure that trickles into it, but like individually, just himself, I definitely liked him as a player better. And like some of it, like it was even him getting beat because of the torn pec. But like I factored that in when I'm watching his film. Like his first 4 or 5 games when he didn't tear his pec, I really, really liked what he was doing. So,
well, I'm on the same page because I have him even higher than you do, and he's not 15th. So, 15th, I have C.J. Mosley.
C.J. Mosley. Okay. That was gonna be like one of my surprises. I was gonna be like, I have a Mosley a little bit lower than some people may think I do.
And I'm even lower than you.
No, well, that was your 16th or 15th player.
15.
Okay, so we're actually at the same exact spot with Mosley, because Mosley was my next. Yeah, Mosley was my next one. But we have Greg Rollo says we want Kuntz. I think you're speaking for yourself here. Nania, is he speaking for you as well? Do you want Kuntz as well with Greg Rollo, or do you not want Kuntz?
Well, all I can say is that I haven't brought him up yet, and we got 14 spots to go. So stay tuned.
There we go. Yeti says we are all right. Conklin is a top around 12 with last year's trio. He could be Konkraski with AR that's going from 13 to 7 or 8 easily. Yeah, I like listen, and it's kind of dependent on targets, right? But I think he's going to be a guy who's highly efficient. Like use him in the seam. He was better than you'd expect. He's better than you'd expect last year with contested catches. So like, I don't think it's gonna be a situation where he's loading up the stat sheet and getting 800-900 yards because you have to spread the ball out to Mike Williams and Brees and Devontae Adams when he comes here in a couple of the weeks and all these guys. So I don't think he's going to like really outproduce what he did the last 2 years, but he's going to be so damn efficient that I think he's gonna almost like kind of increase his value in some people's minds.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm projecting for him, because like there's so many mouths to feed that I don't think he's going to get necessarily more receptions or targets because he was already getting a good amount. I mean, he had the 11th most for tight ends last year, 61 catches. But you add Mike Williams, Corley, full season of Rodgers with Brees Hall, Garrett Wilson getting targeted on plays where he's supposed to be. And like, I don't know if there's room for him to get more passes. And I don't even think he was necessarily being missed that often. It's just that this is a guy who, with his contested catch ability and his route running ability, should be getting more red zone looks than he's getting. He should be getting more third down looks than he's getting. So his yards or receptions might even go down, but I think you're going to see him be highly involved in the red zone and have a good touchdown year. And I think it's going to feel like he makes a bigger impact, and he is going to make a bigger impact because the catches are going to matter more. Like I think you're going to see third down receptions. You're going to see more of those seam balls. You're going to see, it's going to feel like he's more impactful because like even with these numbers, 61 for 622 last year, it rarely felt like he was like a major presence in the game. And that's because they weren't like, he wasn't being fully maximized to what he's capable of doing. A lot of those catches were just checkdowns. So I think you're going to take a lot of those checkdowns out and you're going to sub in red zone touchdowns and third down conversions. So yeah, I think it might not manifest itself in a lot more catches and yards, but the impact is going to be a lot greater for Conklin. But yeah, which spot were we at? You just had your we both had Mosley 15.
Yeah, and I want to stay on to the tight ends a little bit.
Yeah,
Conklin can have this from Dano. Conklin can have every bit of the impact that Kincaid had from about midseason the Bills last year. Greg says Ruckert needs the ball more. So I think Ruckert has some like untapped receiving ability. Like there were some times I saw him get open last year, and like I do think he has the ability to get open versus linebackers, but they didn't really like isolate him and really like target him. But he needs to be much more consistent with his blocking. Like it's one great play, one bad play, one great play, one bad play. But I agree with Greg in terms of like, you know, obviously we have a lot to spread the ball to this season, but I would see Conklin a little bit more involved in the passing game. So I do think he has some good athleticism that maybe we haven't seen take advantage of yet. But Dano says, does anyone 11 through 20 on your list have the ability to crack the top 5 season with an optimal season? Let's get to 11. I'm going to get to 11 and answer that question because there's definitely some guys who I think could crack. Yeah, once we get to 11, we'll revisit that. Sluggo says JJ Quincy could both be top 5 after this year. Conklin is going to be him. Let's see. StreamYard is bugging. What's wrong with StreamYard? With the overlapping pick and username, strange. Oh, I don't know what's going on there. My bad if that's on my end. I'm cool with Conklin only getting 500 this year, but I want at least 5 tutties. I've been screaming for 707 all offseason. I think that's about right. 600-700 yards, 5 to 8 touchdowns, I would say. So I'm pretty on board with you there, Yeti. So I'm on 14. We both had Mosley at 15, right? You didn't go to 14 yet?
No.
Okay.
So I'll go to 14.
Sure.
I got Morgan Moses in this spot.
Okay.
I agree with everything you said. I mean, it feels like he's gotten more productive, and that's despite playing through an injury last year, which, you know, he's getting older and guys decline randomly sometimes, but that's balanced out by the fact that he wasn't even 100% last year, and he was still really impressive. And the scheme it seems like it's going to be a good fit for him if they do make this transition that we expect them to based on the additions that they made. So I think he's going to continue to be a top 10-ish sort of right tackle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is the spot where I have Conklin. Again, I do think you're a little bit low on him on your list. I think he's an okay blocker, like okay run blocker, okay pass blocker. He might have been even a little bit better at that in Minnesota. I think he had a really good year blocking and came here and disappointed maybe a little bit in terms of blocking, but I still think he's an okay blocker. And then as a receiving tight end, again, I think he's really good versus linebackers. He's great up the seam. He's great contested catches last year. He's been putting up solid top 10 receiving tight end numbers with probably the worst quarterback room of all time. Like legitimately, I don't think you can get better or worse than Zach Wilson, who was a historic level bust, and Tim Boyle, who I legitimately do not know why is in the NFL. Like I don't understand how he's still in the NFL, how he was in the NFL. I think he had a negative or he had more interceptions than touchdowns in college. Like, how was he in the league for 4 years or 3 years or 5 years or whatever it was? That's a question I'll always have. But Conklin put up numbers with an absolute trash quarterback room. And I do think, again, he's legitimately a very solid tight end. And like Yeti said, maybe he's in that 10, 11, 12 range this year. But I think towards the end of the year, people are like, hey, he might be the 7th, 8th, 9th best tight end in the league this year. So Conklin, 14, which may even be too low for me at this point, because I'm definitely a big Conklin guy.
Yeah, if I were to make some trades, I'd probably move him into this area. Now that we're talking about it more, probably 15th, I'd move him up to. But I'll stick with what I had.
Yep. So Conklin was my 14. Yours was Morgan Moses. My 13 next is. Damn, man. I actually, you know what? I'm going to move. I was about to say the name, and I was like, do I like this guy more than this guy? This one might be a little bit surprising to some people, but
this guy's going down, I feel like. It's pretty likely we have the same guy here. Just looking at the top versus this one.
I just put him down. Yeah, I just put him down. This is DJ Reed, actually.
Okay. That's not my 13.
Yeah. Because I was looking at the guys above him, and I'm like, I think these are all like, now we're getting to the range where like these guys are good, but he's a number 2 corner, right? He's not a number 1, so you have to consider that. Like, And honestly, like Reed may even be below Conklin to me. I think Conklin's a better like tight end than Reed is a corner. Like you're talking about
Really?
Conklin being the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th best tight end. Reed is probably what, the 20th, 21st, 25th best corner in the NFL. So he might even be a little bit too high here. I might knock him down. Dude, I don't know. Like I like Reed, but Reed might be below Moses. Like I might put Reed below Conklin, Reed below Mosley, Reed below Moses at this point. So I think if I had to redo it, he's probably like one spot above Mike Williams. I think he's a very solid number 2 corner, but I like Mosley. I think he's still a solid, starting level linebacker. I think again, Conklin's a solid player. So this is probably honestly a couple spots too high for Reed, but he finished at my 13th. But realistically, if I had to redo this list, he's actually probably my 15th with my 16th with Williams right below him, Morgan, Moses, and Mosley right above him. So Reed's really my 16, but I had him at 13.
Okay. Well, 13th, I have Jermaine Johnson.
Okay. Yeah. We are close there. I'm trying to think if I actually had him rank Reed. I'll probably say I have more faith in Morgan Moses than Mosley at this point. So maybe it's Reed Mosley. Yeah, I think that's what it would be. I think it'd be Moses, Reed, and then Mosley, with Williams finishing one spot below him. If I had to, or one spot below Mosley, I would say. But nonetheless, I screwed it up a little bit, so I'm not going to go back to do that too much. But we're at number 13 or 12.
13. I have Jermaine 13. Did you say your 13th yet?
Yeah.
Reed was your 13th.
Reed was my 13, which is now Conklin, really, but nonetheless, my 12 is Joe Tippmann. I think he's gonna be a very solid player, but does he reach his ceiling in? Does he? Gotta be fun at parties. I don't know what that means necessarily, but does that? Oh, you're talking about Mosley. Mosley does strike me as a weird guy, but nonetheless, yeah, I think Tippmann's gonna be solid. But does he reach his peak this year? Probably not. So I think he's a solid player, but I don't think he's like a Pro Bowl or All Pro level player at this point.
Yeah, I have him higher than you, but very close. So in my 12th spot, I have DJ Reed here. I think I'm higher on him than you are.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand, like, maybe being a little bit cooler on him than maybe what the consensus is. But at the same time, I just feel like the cornerback position league wide is in this spot where it's like, not that I have, fully informed knowledge of every single cornerback season last year, like we do with these two guys. I mean, you could look at stats or whatever, but there's always stuff lost in the weeds there. So not that I understand exactly how good every single cornerback is, but yeah, it's a pretty thin position. And I feel like Reed, for 3 seasons in a row now, has kept himself in that mix of being a really solid, like top 20-ish cornerback, which, at a position where there's 2, basically even 3 starters at this point, puts you in like that number 1 territory. I feel like he justifies the number 12 spot here as like a low end cornerback 1 to me. And like, even looking at his season last year, his numbers kind of finished in that 20-ish area, but that's with the 2 Miami games being a massive portion of the production that he allowed. And obviously you would, that's your division rival. It's an elite offense. You want him to step up in those games, but I think it was 40% of his yards for the whole season were just against the Dolphins. So if you look at most of the year outside of that, he was at a much higher level than, just like a top 20 corner. So for me, I think I'm higher on him than you, but I do get the, apprehension, but I have him at 12.
Yeah, I just saw him get like beat in situations where maybe he wasn't targeted, but there was a few times where I'm like, hey, he gave up quite a bit of separation here. He got lucky, or maybe a safety came over. There's a drop, so I think he's a good number 2. I do, but like, and again, it's like, how do you quantify? Because if he's a good number 2, or let's say he's even an elite number 2, an elite number 2 corner, or a top 10 tight end, like, well, then why is he above Conklin? Like, so again, it's more like personal preference that kind of trickles into it. So Reed would be my 15th, again, right below Moses and right above Mosley. But I have Conklin over him. I have, Tippmann over him. And then my 11th, I'm not sure if we had 11 yet, but this is I'm actually gonna put this guy one spot higher too. Like I go to say the names, I'm like, I don't know. And this is only because of injury. AVT is my 11th player.
Oh, okay. I'm close.
Yeah.
I'm not too far off.
Yeah, it's just a thing where I think he could be like, I think this is a player who could be number 5 next year. Like, and I'll go back to Dano's question a little bit about that. Like, who's the most likely out of our 11 through 20 to get into the top 5? I think AVT could be there. The problem is he's played 12 games in 2 years. Is that about right? Something like that. So at this point, he needs to. Oh, okay. Was it 6? Was it 6 and 6 both years?
7 and 5.
7 and 5. 7 and 5. He's a player who I legitimately think can be an all-pro guard. Like, I think he's that good. Do I like the fact that throughout his career now he's moved from, left guard to right guard to left tackle to right tackle? I do think that's hampered his development a little bit. But with that being said, him healthy, I think he is an all-pro, Pro Bowl level right guard. It's just he hasn't obviously been asked to do that. He hasn't had the fortune in that aspect. And again, he's been injured. So this is more so 11 because of injury, and he missed out on the top 10 by one spot, again, because of that lack of health. So,
yeah, for me, I mean, I have him a couple spots higher. For me, I was a little more willing to overlook that than someone like Williams, because I think having happened twice in a row, it's not really a freak thing. Like, it's definitely a real concern, but it's less consistent than someone like Mike Williams, to where I think he should have a chance of, as long as he avoids another serious injury, you think he should be someone who stays together, but you're talking about, for most of the year.
About Mike Williams. Mike Williams has had a lot of nagging injuries though. Like, Mike Williams has never really been out for full seasons, right? It's usually he plays 14, 15 games, couple of games he comes out, he hasn't really had a ton of season ending injuries, at least off the top of the noggin. I'm not sure if I'm right there.
Right. He hasn't until this one, but I feel like a player like that is, maybe even more likely to have, even if he's had fewer season-ending injuries than AVT has, just the fact that he's injured more often is, more opportunity for him to have one. So I don't know. I was a little less. I think I still was, or did still take some points off AVT for the injury, because I think I would have him higher just based on pure talent. I think I definitely would, looking at this. There's probably 3 guys ahead of him. I would have put him over if there were no injury concerns. So I did dock him a little bit, but not quite down to 11. But in my 11th spot, I have Joe Tippmann here, so one spot ahead of you. Okay, I agree. I think we'll see 2 leaps from him. I think there will be one this year to where he's good, very good, and then I think starting next year is where he could potentially start the prime of his career and be like a borderline Pro Bowl type center.
Yeah. So now with the, we'll get to the chat a little bit before we get into the actual top 10. Yeti, and I'll throw this to you, says a little off topic, but I get Jet back. He has to get back to real life, I guess. Any thoughts on Davis or Michael Carter II just spying Christian McCaffrey all game? I'm sure other teams have tried, but Ashton is fast, really fast. I guess he meant both games. Like both games we play the Niners. You're talking about week 1 and the Super Bowl. Is that what you're referring to, Yeti? That's how I'm going to take it. But what do you think about spying Christian McCaffrey in the Super Bowl with MCT or Davis all game?
I don't know. I mean, I think you got to I don't know. It doesn't feel like he's a great weapon, but generally speaking, I think if you're making the other team throw to the running back a lot, it usually is a good thing, because, I mean, if they still have Brandon Ayuk, then I'd rather, you got to pick your poison. So I'd rather have McCaffrey checkdowns than Ayuk's 20 yards of reception. So,
yeah, you want to be aware of him. I could say, okay, man him up in certain situations. Like if he's isolated on the backside, okay, like maybe you give him a little bit more attention or something like that, or, whatever it may be. But you don't want to take a guy out of your game plan. Like you a 1-for-1 on a running back in the passing game that's not great. Like taking Michael Carter out of coverage, like where you could be playing Brandon Ayuk to play McCaffrey, who may be running a check down. I think you're dedicating a little bit too much there in terms of like manpower to him. Certain situations, certain formations they like to throw to him. Yeah, sure. Give him some man coverage. Obviously, you're not going to spy him. You're going to put man coverage on him, and then or like a green dog where, hey, if he blitz if he doesn't run out for a route, and if he does run out for a route, you're in man coverage, you're not going to spy him though. But I think that's probably a little bit of overkill for Christian McCaffrey at this point. Great player. But like you said, if you're forcing checkdowns to McCaffrey, it's probably a pretty good game for you, right? Like Christian McCaffrey in the game that we played him in Carolina, he had like 1,000 catches that game, and we lost.
They scored 19 points.
19 was it 19 to 16 or whatever?
Yeah, 19 to 14. The offense
14
could do anything. So it's like that looks good in fantasy. It's like, oh, he's an amazing receiver. No, I'm not saying he's not. Like he's probably the best, and he is a legitimate weapon. It's just on an offense like that where you have legit receivers who can destroy you that way. It's like I would rather delegate towards that than the running back.
Exactly. And if it's a thing where like, hey, they really like to run, like choice routes for him out of this formation, and it's a big like 3rd and 5, and they think they're going to isolate him versus CJ Mosley, then okay, like, hey, maybe you bring in Ashton Davis to play him in man coverage, something like that. Like, yes, but all game, no, I wouldn't say so. We do. What's the other? Dano says that's why I don't think Reed is going to command a giant sack of money, and is in fact retainable on a moderate shorter deal. Yeah, but like, what's a moderate shorter deal? Like, okay, Nania, we talk about obviously guarantees and all that bullshit right now, but his per year is going to be what do you think? Like in terms of obviously it's more so the guarantees, but like what do you think he's gonna make like in terms of the per year?
I'm pulling it up right now because I don't want to just make up a random number, but I mean, I guess like that 20 to 25 range in salary among corners, does that make sense for him? Because I mean, age-wise, this is going to be his second deal. How old is he going to be? 29 next year?
29
or 28? 28. So maybe he could get under like top 10 to 15-ish deal. I mean, all right. So looking at the salaries now, if he were to be or get the 10th highest average per year, that's $13.5 million. Does that sound realistic?
His
previous deal is 11 per year. 3 for 33.
I was going to say anywhere from like 13 to 16, I think, of where he falls. Like $13 to $15 million a year is probably where he falls, in my opinion. So is that, you said, was it 12 or 13? Was that number?
Yeah, 10th highest right now is 13.5. That's Charvarius Ward. Darius Slay, 13. Jamel Dean, 13.
Yeah. Like I would say 13, 14 million. Like 13.5 is the over-under for me for DJ Reed. So I guess it's like relatively inexpensive, but would you rather have him for 13.5 for $14 million or Michael Carter II for what is it going to be like 10.1?
A guy we'll get to in a few, quite a few spots here.
Quite a few spots for you. Okay.
Yeah.
Tyron Smith, Yeti says Reed should ride the Jets wave out and re-sign modestly. He is sadly starting to age and won't get the respect anywhere else. Us Jets truly love him, even if he's our nickel in 3 years. Still, I love DJ Reed too. It just depends on the price, and like I'm going to prioritize guys like Quincy, re-signing Quincy in 2 years over him, and Sauce and Garrett and all those guys we talk about all the time. So, let me see. Rich says I think we are going to see Tibbin and ABT in the top 10 next year. If this line stays healthy, I'm with you. Reed goes in the 16 million range. Yeah, 13 to 16, 13 to 15 is about my range, but nonetheless, going back to Dano's question before, which I'm not going to be able to find it again, but I remembered it. In your 10 through 11, Nania, who has the best chance to be a top 5 player? And you can give me like your 2 or 3
did
players.
We get to 10 yet? We just did 11, right?
Well, he said 11. He said 11 through 20, I believe was the question.
11 through 20. All right.
Yeah.
And who has the best chance to be a top 10 or top 5?
Top 5. Top 5 is a little bit different than top 10, in my opinion, because I have like a ranking
much
for
higher
that.
ceiling. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see, 11 through 20. Who's the best chance to be top 5?
I'll say mine, so you can think about yours, because I already kind of did it. And there's only really 2 who I think can make that. Actually, there's 3 who can make that leap, and it's we're talking about the top. Okay, actually, only 2. I think it's my last 2 guys. I think it's ABT and Tibbin. I think ABT could be again a Pro Bowl, all pro level guard if he's healthy all year. So I would say him, and then Tibbin probably number 2. I think Tibbin could be a Pro Bowl, all pro level center. Does that happen this year in year 2? Maybe it takes him an extra year. But I think he could be creeping up at least. I would say this time next year, Tibbin's in my top 10, and ABT is just slightly outside my top 5. But those are probably my two guys.
Yeah, I don't have ABT in my 11 to 20 range. We haven't gotten to him yet. So yeah, Tippmann for me is probably the most likely. Dark horses, maybe Jermaine Johnson. Like I'm talking very dark horse because it's a high bar on this team with
5
some
is
of the
yeah.
guys you got to compete against. Again, I
5 is
mean,
high.
we'll get to it when we get there, but you have legitimate number one at their position in the league contenders at least 3 different positions, and you could probably throw in a couple more. So it's an extremely high bar. So Tippmann's the only one I would feel good about answering that question with.
So, and this next guy, he's going to tie into the conversation. I moved him up a little bit, but JJ is my 10. But that's a situation where I would put him in that conversation too. It's just, does JJ get enough sacks to propel himself into being like an absolute stud elite edge rusher? I don't know. Again, I do think JJ is going to be a guy who is an 8 to 11 sack a year guy, which is great, or which is fine. And then a stud edge defender. Like, I don't know if he has the ability to be a 18, 19, 20 sack guy. Obviously, that's a high bar to clear, but you're talking about being top 5 on Jets roster with, like you said, guys who are legitimately competing to be top 1, 3 to 5 in their positions. So it's almost like JJ is like more comfortable to be like a top 10 lock than he is to be then he has a, how do I want to phrase that? I feel like he's a top 10 lock where Tippmann isn't, but Tippmann has a higher ceiling than JJ, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and another part about JJ that's underrated too, like when you look at, and I did the breakdown of him, he had 7, 8 sacks, whatever it was. But also consider like he had quite a few pass deflections. He had the block punt. He had a deflected ball for a pick 6. Like JJ was really damn good last year. So he's my 10th player. He's just cracking that top 10 at number 10.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's a football player is the best way you could put it. I mean, like we'll see. Like I think the ceiling could be capped until we see a little more development in terms of consistent winning as a pass rusher. But like he's a football player. He does it all in terms of just finding ways to get involved in the game with his motor and his athleticism. So yeah, I had him 13, so a little bit lower, but yeah, I view him about the same way. But my number 10 is Hassan Reddick. I think, does he maybe have I mean, he's outside that 11 to 20, but he's someone who might have that upside to be top 5 just because he has shown he's capable of getting a lot of sacks and strip sacks. I think he's going to play fewer snaps on this team than he has with his previous stops, so that might limit him a little bit. But yeah, I mean, this is a guy who is the 4th most sacks in the league over the past 4 years, 4 straight double-digit sack seasons, most forced fumbles over that span. So he's a big-time playmaker. And even if there are some concerns, like run defense average, getting up there in age a little bit, maybe he's not as consistent as like a Bryce Huff. Despite those things, it's hard to argue with that consistency in his. When I say he's less consistent than Bryce Huff, I mean more like snap to snap. If there's one play and I need someone to get pressure, like just win, I'd probably take Huff. But over the course of the season, who's going to make more big time plays? I think Reddick is clearly more trustworthy in that regard right now. So yeah, just with his ability year after year to produce a lot of big time plays, it's hard for me to not have him up here.
Yeah. I don't have Reddick yet. This is, again, these are hard because these guys are all so freaking good. Like this guy that I'm about to say, I think is legitimately, he's top 3 at his position. You can argue number 1, number 2. Maybe it's hurt that he doesn't play all the snaps, but this is where I have Michael Carter second at my number 9. And again, maybe it's because he, I think the Jets played like 80% of nickel last year, or nickel or dime, or I think it was nickel. We were like 80%, whatever it was. We were the highest in the league, I believe. So he plays quite a bit, but because he comes off the field a little bit, am I knocking him for that? I'm not 100% sure, like exactly how to explain why he's 9, but he's 9, great player. It's really hard to even say anything bad about him. We have so many good, damn good players on the team right now. So he falls to 9 for me.
So where do you think we reached the line of players who would be number 1 on the 2020 Jets? Are we well past that?
Number 1 on the 2020 Jets. Who was the best player in 2020? Was that Q? Well, Q was on the roster then, right?
Like pre-breakout Quinnen Williams.
Quinnen?
Probably. Like, was it Marcus May?
Quinnen. It was probably Quinnen and Mosley were the 1 and 2.
And Mosley didn't play that year.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think Mosley was my 2 that year, like going into the year. And Q was Crowder. Yeah, I wonder if I can pull some of those up from like years ago, like that. Some of the lists were just gross. Like legitimately, guys who were at like 5 or 6 those years wouldn't even be on the list these years.
Yes, I guess it was probably Quinnen Williams, and this was 2 years before he really hit his peak. So whatever you thought of Quinnen Williams at that point, where would you have him on these rankings?
Hold on, I'm trying. I'm as you're saying this, I'm trying to scroll back and find the last possible top 25. So in my top 25, this is the last time I've edited this was September 4th, 2021. My top 10, 2021, my top 10 was Quinnen Williams number 1, Carl Lawson number 2. Yikes. Mosley 3, Becton 4, Corey Davis 5, Fadokasi 6, Elijah Moore 7, Rankins 8,
6,
JFM 9, and Marcus May 10 with Crowder at 11.
Damn,
that's gross. You got Bryce Hall in here. You have Shaq Lawson. Keelan Cole was my 18. Vinny Curry was 22. Tyler Croft, Marcus Joyner.
Croft was in there.
Yeah, Tyler Croft.
I think Ruckert is clearly better than Croft, right?
I would say so. Yeah, I think so. I think they're probably battling each other.
Ruckert's not even really in the conversation for top 25.
Yeah. Wow.
Yikes.
But in terms of you're talking about the line
yet.
Okay. Yeah. So
the line of like best 2020 player. That was my initial question.
Yeah. Well, I would say it was Quinnen, and I think we're at this point. Yeah,
it's probably somewhere around. It's probably the same line that we put for like the average. Where do the average starters start? Because I mean, it was Quinnen. He was like good. I think at that point, not yet elite, and that was about it. I mean, maybe Marcus May was also good, but I don't think they had any very good players. And I think here that starts at like 18 or 17.
Yeah, it's wild. It's so bad. But did you give your 9th yet?
No. This is where I have AVT, number 9 spot.
Again, it's the injury stuff, man. It is concerning at this point. I really want him to be healthy. But at this point, like, and this kind of, I saw this a little bit when Sabo and I built the rosters against each other last week. They need more depth at this point, right? Like AVT hasn't been healthy in 2 years, and it's just Schweitzer as a backup for 3 spots. Like, do they have some new, like, unfounded, or at least unfounded by us, faith in Xavier Newman or Jake Hansen or somebody? Like, they need somebody else in interior, right? Like, I am not comfortable going into the season with this interior, or lack thereof, of interior depth the Jets have or do not have.
Yeah, that's kind of an underrated hole. I mean, I like Schweitzer as a backup, but it's just, him being your one guy pretty much at this point to back up 3 spots is, you're an injury away from last year's, what the second half of the season was, with all these randoms snapping the ball or playing guard. So, yeah, I would like to see McGovern back, or someone in that caliber, over the next few weeks.
Sluggo asks, if Conklin goes down, who gets his reps? Yeboah or Ruckert? Who would you say, Nania? To me, it's Ruckert. Even though Yeboah seemingly, when he comes in, is pretty consistent. Like when the reps I watched him last year, he's pretty consistent as a blocker. But I still do think Ruckert is tight end 2. So I would elevate him before Yeboah. But I do think Yeboah is tight end 3 at this point.
Yeah, I would take Ruckert because I think there's more upside with him. Yeah. Like, he has more ability to replicate what you would ask Conklin to do. But I think Yeboah should be included in conversations like this, because he's been pretty consistent when he's played, and there's a reason he's stuck around as long as he has. So my number 8, this is where I put Quincy Williams. Same.
For 8, it's just. And I'll say my 7 here too. And my 7 is Reddick. You had him a couple spots below. Yeah. Reddick is, you're talking about top 5 in terms of sacks, or top 4 in terms of sacks the last 5 years, or wherever the stat is exactly. He's a top 5 edge rusher the last 4 or 5 years in terms of his production. So he's been producing for quite a few years now, where Quincy was amazing, like great for 1 year, where Redick has been great for 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So I'm giving a little bit of like the nod to Redick over Quincy because of the resume. And like right now, okay, you had to start sort of, I don't know if you would honestly answer this the way I want you to, but like actually you probably would. Like you're starting a team right now for just this year to win a Super Bowl. Or are you taking Redick or Quincy first? Like to me, I'm taking Redick because he plays a more impactful position. And I know we're not necessarily factoring that in to it. But yeah, I have him here again. It's hard to split hairs at this point, but he is my 7. He's been doing it for quite a bit. Maybe some people are souring on him because of the contract situation and all that stuff, but do not forget that this man is an absolute freak. So absolute stud. Would have been the number 1 for plenty of years in the past, but number 7 on this list.
Yeah, I mean, I maybe put Quincy higher than him because maybe taking the opposite approach of they're not really that far separated.
One's ascending, one's descending.
Yeah, like Quincy is 2 years younger. He's been gradually improving. Whereas Redick, I think, he did take a little bit of a step back last year versus the previous year, and he's about to turn 30. So, but at the same time, like to answer the question you just posed, I think I would take Redick just because the positional value and him having done this for 4 more years, it's like, okay, there's a good bet he'll do it one more time. So yeah, I probably would take him, but I also think Quincy's gonna. Like to go back to our initial kind of criteria.
Like Quincy's a better linebacker than he is a
yeah.
DN.
Like I think Quincy's a better, despite the survey of the coaches and executives and scouts that don't even have him as a top. Like
Tremaine Edmonds, really? Tremaine Edmonds is better than Quincy Williams. Like what are we doing here?
It explains why teams do this stuff all the time. You're like, how could they make that decision? That draft pick, that contract, whatever. Well, here's your explanation. They don't watch the sport that they make decisions for. So,
they 1,000% don't. Like the fact that because wasn't Jalen Ramsey high up on one of those lists too? It's like if you haven't watched Jalen Ramsey in the last year, if you think he's still like a top 5 corner, he's not. He struggled a bit last year when he came in and played. So it is what it is, And even with the Rams that last, like the playoffs, he's getting beat up a little bit. So Ramsey's not that dude anymore, and he was high on those lists. And again, Tremaine Edmonds, who. What are some of the other names that are on that list that are above him? We're like, okay, maybe we're a little bit blind, like we're green goggles, all that stuff, and obviously, what I think Fred Warner and Roquan Smith were 1 and 2, and they were both All Pros. Quincy is the other All Pro because there's only 3 of them at linebacker, and he's an honorable mention. Like, but what were some of the other names on that list? Because I'm forgetting off the top of my head.
Yeah, I had to pull it up. Might take me 2 seconds, but I'll be able to get to that.
Mm-hmm.
But so yeah, like it's not even like a Jets. Yeah, just quickly keep ranting about that. It's not even like a Jets biased thing. It's just like every metric, anyone who watched him, like it's very clear that he should have been there, and for him to not, like, you don't have to put him first, second, third, fourth, but for him to not be top 10. All right, so here's their top 10. Fred Warner 1, then Roquan Smith, Matt Milano, Patrick Queen, Nick Bolton, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Tremaine Edmonds.
Yeah, like okay, so at Nick Bolton's like really, like Nick Bolton's used as a blitzer. JOK is okay, fine, but like as soon as you said Nick Bolton, I'm like, really? So okay, but continue with like, was it 8 through 10?
Last 2, Dre Greenlaw and Foy Oluokun.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. And then same thing with Redick too. Like I don't think Redick was in the top 10. And Redick again is a guy who was top 5 in sacks the last 4 years, and he's not in the top 10 either. It's like why is he suddenly not a good player either? Like he's 29 years old. Obviously they had some talent last year with like Davis and all those guys and Fletcher Cox in the middle, but I'd argue that having Q is more impactful than anything that the Eagles had in their defensive line. So I think Redick will be. He could see even less attention with the Jets than he saw with the Eagles. So, or even like run into more sacks, because maybe there's some times where opposing players could step up or opposing quarterbacks could step up versus the Eagles. But have fun stepping up into a pocket with Q there. So, Redick not being in those lists was a little bit frustrating too. But
yeah, so nonetheless, I just thought those lists. Last thing about it, I just think it's weird because like if there were a ranking by a random ESPN writer or something that keeps them out, it's like, okay, I don't expect them to make smart opinions, but the fact that this was based on a survey of scouts, coaches, executives, the people who are making decisions in the league, and it looks like something that you would get from a random writer.
Fan-sided.
It just shows that it's like, do they actually know more than these people out here when they're making rankings that look just like someone who would have Googled the stats or gone off the jersey sales or the highlights? Even if you did go off the highlights, you should be in there. You should be number one if you went off that. So yeah, it does point to like maybe there's a lot of nepotism in the league, guys who just get their jobs because like they've had it for a long time, so they stick with it. They don't really justify it. So yeah, like it does point to NFL teams don't really deserve the benefit of the doubt for every decision that they make.
Dude, undoubtedly. Again, like there are certain things. I don't know, man. Like again, Dalvin Cook last year. Like there are certain things that you just it makes you lose faith. Dalvin Cook, Laken Tomlinson, CJ Uzama. Like there's plenty of decisions. Like why? Like what are we doing here? But nonetheless, who is your 6, Nania?
Did we do 7 yet? I didn't say my 7th yet.
So I did 7. So my 8 was Quincy. My 7 was Reddick. Who was your
7? Reddick. 7th is where I have Michael Carter the second slotting in.
Okay.
Because I think like, all right, so from above him, I think you're talking about like elite players, the rest of the people. And I think we're going to have the same group of players here in the top 6. So I can't quite put him there because he's not, we're talking about potential either guys who already have locked up the Hall of Fame or are on a trajectory to potentially do it. So I can't quite put him that high, even if you can argue that he's the best slot corner. Whereas I think a couple of these guys above him, you're probably not putting them number 1 at their position. So despite that, I can't put him that high just because like the overall impact isn't quite as substantial. But I do think this is a guy who's, in the conversation to be the best slot corner. And it's because like it's not even flashy what he does. It's just he's so consistent, and you forget he's even out there while the game is happening. It's a testament to how good he is at holding down his role and just not allowing production to his matchups. So yeah, I have him 7.
Yeah, I think I knocked him below Reddick and Quincy just because he plays like 65% of the reps, so he's not out there as much as those guys. But I can argue that really the top 9 for me is where you're talking about elite players like MC2, again, top 3 slot corner. Quincy, according to All Pro, he's the 3rd best linebacker in the league last year, top 3 guy. Reddick is a guy who on this team, like if I told you, hey, Nania, Reddick had 16 sacks in 2024. Like I don't think you'd lose your mind. Like he has that capability. I think really the top 9 players in the Jets, you're talking about elite players who could be like the best at their position, or at least close to it. Right. And it kind of depends on what position you're talking about, because do I think there's a world where I ever take Reddick over TJ Watt or Myles Garrett? No, but again, if you get 16 sacks this year, you're talking about an elite player, in my opinion. But move on to this is your number 6, so the guy who just missed out on the top 5.
Yeah, so 6 here, I have Tyron Smith, which I think this is definitely this is injury influence versus the 2 guys above him. I would have him 4th, I think, if that were not like if it was just raw talent, no injuries accounted for. But dropping down to 6 here because you assume that signing him means you're going to have to play your backup for at least 3 games. You're hoping it stays right around that number. But even with that, you're willing to sign up for it because the 13 games he does give you, you're getting a top 2 to 3 left tackle in the league right now.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. And I'm literally with you in terms of putting Tyron Smith 6. If he was healthy, like if we thought he was going to play 17 games this year, he's probably 3 for me, I would say. Based on my list, like I don't want to give too much. Maybe 4. I don't know. This list is crazy. Maybe 4 at this point because of the age. I'll probably put him 4 transparently, considering health. But dude, like he is just so damn good. I am super nitpicky, and I don't have a lot of bad things to say about him. The run game, he could work a little bit, and then there were sometimes his hands land a little bit high in the pass game, but he's still top 3 at the minimum when he's healthy, right? Like it's Trent Williams.
Yeah.
Is Stanley playing left tackle now, or not Stanley? Slater playing left tackle now. Like I think Sewell's still a right tackle. Like there's some guys up there in terms of tackles. Lane Johnson, he's a right tackle as well. But Tyron Smith, when healthy, is an absolute bona fide stud. So he's my number 6. But again, the injuries, right? So I think we're gonna have the same 5 as well here, Nania. So I will put words in your mouth. This is where Aaron Rodgers falls.
Yep, I got Aaron
Okay.
Rodgers here, and even like based on the criteria we laid out, this might be like way too high because I mean, if we're saying like he's going to be the 6th to 8th best quarterback, which is about where I'd put him. I mean, maybe
Maybe he should
8th
be
is
like
like
10.
the midpoint. So then, based on that, he probably should be like around 10th or something. But
Yeah.
this was just the one player where I was like, okay, we can look past that because he's Aaron Rodgers, and we saw last year how much he matters for this team. So yeah, this is the one player where I overlooked. Okay, maybe he's not really the 5th best in terms of how he ranks at his position, but he's also Aaron Rodgers, so I'll put him 5th.
Yeah, but like let's be positive for a second here because I think we tend to be like try to be cautious with Rodgers and all that stuff.
Yeah.
If I told you that Rodgers was going to be like the 2nd best quarterback in the NFL in 2024, would you think I'm absolutely crazy?
No, like I think the ceiling is. I would say he's not what he did in 2020 to 21. I don't know. Those 2 seasons were a lot different though, because 2020 he was like, I mean, that was one of the best seasons ever. 21, I think, even though he won MVP again, he was a little bit behind that. But that 21 season, I don't think that's totally out of the question. I wouldn't be shocked.
Who are you saying are definitely going I'm being more on the positive side here.
Yeah.
Like who is unequivocally going to definitely be better than him? Mahomes, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, yeah, sure.
I think it's just. I don't think you could say anyone else outside.
But tell
of him,
me,
like,
tell me that like Allen is losing Diggs. He lost some players. He throws up some picks. Like, and I'm not talking about like again, I'm not talking about a crazy year from Rodgers, but like let's say we're being more positive. Let's say he gets 35 touchdowns, 4,100 yards, and only throws 6 picks because he has to. Because he doesn't really have to throw the ball up or anything like that because he's a good defense, good offense, all that stuff. You're like, and Josh Allen is a great player, but like he fumbles the ball. Like I don't know what his numbers usually are. But I could see him throwing 11, 12, 13, 14 picks, having a few fumbles. So like, yeah, maybe Allen definitely I think he's trickling towards like definitely above him, but I can see him having an off year with the change to his offense in terms of like the talent there. Joe Burrow could get injured again. Lamar Jackson's up and down, right? Herbert is up and down with a new coach. Hurts, I think, is generally overrated by people. So like, okay, even if you want to throw Josh Allen, like definitely above him. Why is Burrow definitely above him this year? Why is Lamar Jackson definitely above him? And again, this is considering that this is Rodgers' best roster he's probably had since 2010 when they won the Super Bowl. Like the defense has not been good in championship games. And yeah, he's had some talent on offense, but like this offense is stacked. So even if you want to argue Josh Allen, like fine, but if we're on the positive side here, I think he could be the 2nd or 3rd best quarterback in the league this year. If he is anything close to 21. We have Rivka saying Allen threw 18 picks last season, if I recall correctly. Hawk says he's a turnover machine. He fumbles the ball sometimes. Like he has a lot of ups and downs. So let's say he rides a little bit more of the down this year. Burrow, Jackson, Herbert, Stroud, like why can't he be number 2?
Yeah, I mean, we're at a place with the quarterback hierarchy right now where it feels a lot different than like 10 years ago when you had your definitive top tier guys. Right now, it's very year to year. It's very system based. It's very dependent on circumstances when you have guys like, and this is no disrespect to these players. I'm not saying that they're not good, but when the top 5 of touchdown passes is Dak Prescott, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, and Tua. Again, not saying they're not good players, but does that compare to like when you had Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, guys who you watched them and you knew that they were game changers, that it was them that was making all this happen? Are these quarterbacks always doing that? They're good players, but I think their production has a lot more to do with what's around them. When you consider that, like even Mahomes last year, we know he's probably the best quarterback right now, but his stats weren't good last year. He had 27 touchdowns, 14 picks because the situation around him wasn't good. So you consider what the Jets have around Rodgers, and there's no reason.
Numbers were that bad for Mahomes. I didn't know that's pretty bad.
He was 14th in passer rating. Josh Allen was 16th. Burrow was 18th last year. Hurts was 20th. This is passer rating. So like, it's the situation around your quarterback in the NFL right now is the most important thing. in determining the numbers that he's going to put up. So
Yeah.
Rodgers has already shown his ceiling. So you consider the group that's around him. If he's healthy, there's no reason he can't be as productive as Brock Purdy or Jared Goff or Dak Prescott could. So I agree. The ceiling is as high as anyone else in the league. I don't think there's anyone you could definitively put above him. I would say Patrick Mahomes is definitively better, but you can't definitively say he'll put up better numbers because we just saw last year that a bad situation can make even him look average. So yeah, there's no limit to the ceiling, I don't think.
But it's funny. It's funny. Little Wayne right there. And like what Hawk is saying here, this is the best team he's ever played with on paper. Like 2010 team is arguable, really good team there too. But whether it be number 1 or 2, it's just so funny that everybody talks about Rodgers in his last year. His last year with the Packers, like was it 26 and 12 he threw? Considering he had Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Allen Lazard as the 1, 2, and 3, not a great defense. We always, we talk about Rodgers and him, declining in his play because of the age and stuff. But like, why does nobody mention Mahomes throwing 27 touchdowns and 14 picks? Like, it's just crazy that situation. Like, nobody applies that to the Packers that year though. Like, and also consider that Patrick Mahomes has Travis Kelce. He also has the NFL referees and Taylor Swift, which 100% won him a game or two. And he has Andy Reid, who's a Hall of Fame head coach. So like we talk about Aaron Rodgers down year, who had much less to work with than Mahomes did. And I'm not saying he's better than Mahomes or anything like that, but like, why can't Rodgers be a top 3 guy? It's like, fuck that. Yeah, he definitely can. He definitely be that player again, considering what we have on this roster. So he's been number 5. That's fine. There was something else I was gonna throw into there, but 1,000 things just start going through my head. So nonetheless, we'll move on. My number 4, I think we're gonna be the same at number 4 actually as well. The top 3 I'm not so sure about, but number 4 I am relatively confident in saying that it's gonna be Garrett Wilson for you as well. Okay, so Garrett Wilson's your 4. Tell me why.
Yeah, I think this is a really ideal slot for him because the 3 guys ahead, and I feel like we're going to have a different order, but 3 guys ahead are all going to be very at the forefront of the race to be the best player at their position. 2 of them may have already proven it. So Garrett Wilson can do that, but it's just a very stacked position. It's going to be hard for him to do that this year, but he's capable of it. And with a few years, I think he could eventually take that over. But I don't think he's quite going to be to that level, being number 1 at his position. But at the same time, like, I think he's clearly
he's a ceiling.
I don't know about clearly, but yeah, he's a ceiling to it. But I put him over Rodgers because even with everything we just said, like, I'm just trying to be rational, have a middle ground prediction with him instead of just saying he'll win another MVP and just put him as like a top 8 quarterback. Whereas with Wilson, I think he'll be like 4th or 5th best receiver by the time the season's all said and done. So I think 4 makes sense for him.
Yeah, like you have Chase, you have Jefferson, you have Adams, you have like Amara, you have
Hill.
But yeah, Tyreek Hill. I'm forgetting about. But I think he's like comfortably. I think he's like right towards the top 10 right now in receivers in the NFL. I think after this year, he really like plants himself as a top 8 guy. With Chase, with Hill, I think he's going to be in that type of range next year. Maybe below like the elite tier, which right now is probably, I would say the elite tier is probably Justin Jefferson, Hill, Chase, right? And then you got like Devontae, you got Amara, you got obviously there's guys I'm forgetting off the top of my head.
Would you put CD up in that top 3? Or not yet, because it was only 1 year.
Yeah, I like the numbers of CD. I don't think he's with those guys yet. So I think he's probably like number 4, and then Adams and those guys. So I think he's in that second grouping of guys solidified next year. Not in the top 3, but 4, 5, 6, somewhere in that range for Garrett Wilson, which again, it does speak to the talent of receiver in the league at this point, right? Because like we have a conversation, him versus Brees or whoever it is. Like if there was more good running backs in the NFL, do we knock down Brees a little bit? So like it's relative to your position, but it's also kind of overall talent level too. Because like if all the running backs suck in the NFL, is Garrett Wilson maybe not relative to their position better than Brees? Sure, maybe not, but he's still a better player. Like again, it's kind of hard to quantify because it's not fully dependent on who else is in your grouping of players. But nonetheless, Garrett Wilson's my number 4. This is where we might separate, I think. Who was your number 3?
I have a pretty good feeling we're going to be different here because
Okay.
I do think my number 1 pick involves a little projection, but then 2 and 3 is interesting. But let's be clear. These 3 guys up here, anyone over someone else is not a knock on them. These are elite players who are all going to compete for the top of their position. But at number 3, I have the guy whose jersey I'm wearing right now, straight from China. Got it yesterday. Quinnen Williams is my number 3.
Okay. Which by the way, I told Nania before we even came on, like, I think that collar does look a little bit too thick, but he's trying to say it's closer to the game jerseys and stuff. But that's the first thing I noticed. So it's the collar.
It does look a lot
too thick.
You showed me yours. It is definitely a lot thicker than the version that you have. But like, if you look at the players' jerseys, I think it's closer to this. So I think we're getting the authentic China jerseys.
Yeah. So we have nose kills in here. With the super chat says, for the top 3, can you estimate where they rank at their position in the NFL? Have a good one. So your number 3 was Q. So where do you say Q ranks in the relative to the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Donald is out of the picture now. So like, he had that on lock for almost a decade where just no one was in his stratosphere. So now that he's gone, I think it's Quinnen Williams or Chris Jones. I mean, Dexter Lawrence is kind of in that conversation. I think some people might put him over Quinnen, but kind of different roles, different positions. But in terms of guys who could like really wreck the passing game as well as the run game, I think it's Quinnen versus Jones. Chris Jones kind of trending down in terms of age. Quinnen Williams more so trending up. So I think it's going to be between them two, and either one of them can take it. But I would lean towards the younger player who's trending up. So I think Quinnen's going to have a chance. I think he's going to do it. I think when the season's over, it'll be him at the top.
As number 1? Yeah. Okay. So my number 3 is Breece. I think he's a great player. I do. I do think there's like a little bit of a lack of talent at the running back position right now. Like, it's McCaffrey, but like, there is no Derrick Henry's fallen off at this point. Like, there's not a lot of stud running backs in the NFL level, right? Like, we're talking about Bijan being the number 2 or 3, and he didn't really prove a ton last year. So I do think there's, again, a little bit of a lack of talent, but if you told me right now that Breece was the number 1 best back in the NFL this upcoming year, I wouldn't question you on it. Again, however you quantify that. If I had to take right now Christian McCaffrey or Breece Hall for just this year, I'm still probably taking McCaffrey at number 1. So I would say Breece is the number 2 running back in the NFL at this point, with McCaffrey being 1. After this year, I would say Breece overtakes McCaffrey, but just for this year, I think it's McCaffrey. So the dude is just an absolute stud. So Breece is my number 3 player. I'll go with my number 2 first, because you already talked about him. Q is my number 2. Which you know who my number 1 is then. Q, to me, I'm with you. Chris Jones trending down. Chris Jones is also notorious for taking plays off and only like rushing on certain plays. Big third down rush. So you do see him take plays off undoubtedly. I think his run game is not as strong as Q's, while his pass game is probably stronger than Q's, but Q is ascending, and I think Chris Jones has probably like plateaued and is trending downwards going forward. So I think Q after this year is going to be recognized as the best defensive tackle in the NFL.
Yep, agreed. So my number 2, obviously, therefore you revealed yours as well, but we are not equal on this one. I have Sauce Gardner as my number 2.
Wow.
And yeah, he's already proven to be the best corner.
2 All-Pros, the best corner in the league. There's not even a question with him. Like,
2 All-Pros.
Breece has a question, right? Yeah.
But that's the point of the list. Like, we're projecting what's going to happen. And to me, I guess we can go over both since we know the number 1 now. Yeah. But for me, like, again, like we're splitting hairs, I think, at this point, because Sauce is like already proven to be the number 1 corner, and I don't see that changing after this year. But with Breece, I just feel like you mentioned it, I think a big part of it is the lack of competition for me that played into this, because outside of McCaffrey, I just don't see who he's competing against. I mean, maybe Bijan, but I think Brees is a better player than him. I just think when this season's over, it's going to be Brees up top, and it's not going to be close. Versus, like we talked about with Q, like Chris Jones is in that conversation, Dexter Lawrence. There's a lot of talent at defensive tackle. Who knows who's going to break out this year? Sauce, I think at the top of the corner conversation, other players might get into that. But with Brees, I really think...
Yeah, but like who? Like you talking about like the Bears dude, right? Like I know he was up there recently. I know Surtain fell off quite a bit last year in terms of at least the numbers. Jalen Johnson, the name I forgot. I know Surtain fell off. Like I think Sauce is like he's number one unquestionably. Like Brees could be number one, but McCaffrey's I think pretty close.
I just look at what he's done with this situation that he's been in and how much he's exceeded that, and like you take what he's done over the lowest expectations in the league, and just even if you raise it to average blocking, stacked box, whatever you want to look at in terms of how he's set up, even for just average, if he exceeded it the same amount that he's been exceeding the expectations, that is, I think, already at least equal to McCaffrey. Mm-hmm. And if you get good offensive line play and good quarterbacking and a low, below average number of stack boxes, whatever you want to, however you want to quantify it, then I think you're talking past him, because like his efficiency has already been really good with the worst offensive line play. And then just by AVT playing, he's been past McCaffrey in terms of yards per carry. That's just with AVT, with the same pile of garbage around him that's been playing the rest of the season. So you add the rest of the assistants that you're hoping to get on the O-line, at receiver, quarterback, on top of that. And the ceiling to me is like, I think it could be a really big gap at the end of this year.
With Brees, when I feel like I'm watching him, obviously great player. There is some like down by down consistency. I want a little bit more from him. Like where I watch Q, I'm like, just everything is dominant. Sauce, everything is dominant. So, but I get it. I do. I got to go in a few minutes, but I do want to read my next couple of guys that I had right below the top 25. And then you said you had Sherwood at 41, I believe you said. So I want to hear
Fotu. I had Fotu.
So I want to hear a couple of your guys, I guess. But my next 10, and this is in no specific order. Kinlaw did fall just out of it. He was at 26. Corley was at 25. But then I had Allen, who you just had in your top 25. I had Isaiah Davis right below Allen. And this is just me listing it. I had Fotu right below those guys. Then I had Ashton Davis, Solomon Thomas, Brandon Eccles, Jeremy Ruckert, Gibson, Oliver, and Clemens were like my next guys that I listed. So I want to hear your 15 or 16 guys you had over Fotu.
All right. So starting right outside the top 25, Isaiah Davis was the top runner up.
Okay. Yeah.
Little high maybe, but I like him. I think he's gonna be a solid player.
No, I was really close to you there too.
Yeah. Tyrod right behind him.
Okay.
Jeremy Ruckert, Solomon Thomas.
Okay.
Isaiah Oliver.
Okay.
Ashton Davis.
Fine.
Jamie and Sherwood.
Okay.
Maybe in hindsight I could have put him a little higher, but
no, I'll stop you when I think it gets crazy. I'll stop you when I think it gets crazy, because all these people I had them in the same grouping as well. So.
Oh my goodness. What's coming up? You're definitely going to think some of these are crazy. All right. Gibson.
Nope. I think
36.
That's fine.
This right here is where it's going to start. You might even though you're not like a big Leaky Fotu fan either. So
no, I'm not.
I don't know. Maybe you won't be. But this one you will. Michael Clemens.
Dude, that's the last guy on my list. Fotu is a better player than Michael Clemens.
Yeah.
And who are the other guys?
Then we have Wes Schweitzer.
No,
Alan Lazard,
Irvin Charles. Come on. Why did that? You got some Fotu hate right there. Clemens has done nothing. Lazard, no. Yeah, you called it. You called off the line. I'm fine with Gibson, Ruckert, Oliver, Thomas, Eccles, Davis, Allen. I had all those guys in the same grouping. Clemens, no, that's where I can't. I can't allow it.
At least like rookie year, he did like some solid edge setting. I don't see that much of anything from Fotu. It's just size is supposed to be the appeal. Like here's your big nose tackle, but he gets moved around so easily, and he's not a pass rusher. So
yeah,
I just don't know. 41. This is out of 90 players, so he's on the top half here.
I know, but Michael Clemens, and who was the one after Michael Clemens? It was Michael Clemens and who?
Clemens, Schweitzer.
Yeah,
Allen.
yeah.
But Schweitzer, he's been a starting guard. for
Yeah, a
he's
very
like
bad one.
borderline backup low end starter. I think
I guess.
Fotu is like a DT4.
Mhm.
Lazard, I probably this is it's probably too high, but at least he's had seasons where like
I don't think it's as crazy as you because like
he's a
even
wide
Lazard,
receiver
like
3.
if you were to tell me, hey, Lazard comes in this year, Mike Williams was banged up, Lazard had 400 yards, he looked a little bit better with Aaron Rodgers. Okay, I could understand it. Like I think you could argue even I would even put Lazard over Clemens. Like Clemens just has done nothing in my opinion. But we have Rivka says I'm curious which Jets X Factor writer will be the first one to produce. Why what's the actual? Do you know the actual pronunciation of it? Are we saying it wrong? Because it took me a little bit for fashion. Yeah, can you look up the pronunciation?
That
So I
took
have
me a
it.
little bit, but I'm used to that now. Fashion.
Is it?
I'm getting that.
I say leaky. Is it leaky?
Fatu. Laki Fatu. Is
Laki
that correct?
Fatu.
That's what comes up here on. There's like a Google pronunciation.
Laki Fatu. Yeah, I'm just gonna say leaky Fatu.
Lucky Fatu? No, I played the recording. It's Lucky Fatu.
Leki Fatu. It's Lecky with a short E. With a short E. What's
no, here it
short
is.
E? What's a short E versus a long E?
Lecky Fotu? Is that right?
Lecky Fotu? Lecky.
That's what
Leaky?
Pro Football Reference says.
Rivka, I'll be completely transparent here. I don't know. I think
I don't know how many times we're going to be saying it based on him being 41st on my list.
And like in that range for me, I guess, kind of too. But so it's Lecky. It's Lecky Fotu.
Lecky. Okay.
Lecky, but it's Fotu. It's not Fatu, right? It's Fotu. Okay. Lecky Fatu. Okay, Lecky Fatu. I don't know what the hell, Rivka, again, I don't know school, all that stuff. You're a teacher. I don't know what a short E is. I'll be completely transparent here. Maybe I'm an idiot. I don't know what a short E versus a long E is, but nonetheless, I got to do some now. It'd be nice if Al would. I don't think he retired officially yet, right? But maybe he did, and I didn't see it. I taught math. Yeah, well, it's still close enough. Close enough. Nania, any last words? I'm gonna have Sable on next week. We're gonna do camp battles and talk about like the start of camp. Nania will be back on, I believe, in 2 weeks, and we're going to break down the AFC East like we do every year, and compare the teams. Obviously, if you're the number one, like let's say the Jets cornerback group, like we're gonna write the number one, right? You get 1 point, and the Pats will be 4. You want to finish with the least amount of points in the division. So we rank the entire team, special teams unit. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about coaching as well. That gets factored in. And then we see where we stand in the AFC East. Roster battles with Sabo. And then one of Sabo or Nania for a 53-man roster prediction. But any final words, Nania?
Yeah, this was fun as always. I hope I carried on the top 25 legacy. I feel like we were very much in lockstep. So there weren't many players that we were off by more than like 3 spots.
McDonald, Conklin a little bit.
Conklin
and MC2,
which I probably would
the
swap
farthest.
In hindsight, but not too many. So I'm looking forward to finally some semblance of football returning. I don't know how many more Devontae Adams rumors, Aaron Rodgers minicamp talk I can handle. Like actually mentally, I think I'm going to have some sort of. I'm going to need some sort of assistance very soon. I'm on the brink.
Gotcha. Yeah. So we appreciate you, Nania. We'll see you. We'll see everybody next week. Enjoy the last couple of hours before the Jets rookies report. We get to see some pictures of guys walking in with bags and getting all excited and
with a baseball bat. You got to match Clemens. That's the bar.
This guy has nice shoes. This guy looks super vascular. Oh my God, this guy's a little chubby.
Clemens, do you think the guy who's like, who increases his on-field stock just by how he looks walking through the parking lot?
This is a rookie.
Yeah, it's got to be Braylon Allen. I mean, not Braylon Allen. Like deservedly so, good player, but yeah,
it's Braylon Allen.
His walk up is impressed a lot of people.
Who is going? Rivka says who's gonna be this year's JJ. Different player. It's McDonald, right? Like in terms of like guy who like steps up into that. Gibson, I think Gibson's another guy. Tony Adams is a guy who steps up into a bigger role. Titman is another guy who steps up into a bigger role. So there's quite a few, but we appreciate you guys, and we will catch you next time.
All right.